Welcome back to Series 3 of the Huxley Morton podcast, the show where each week we speak to pharma company owners and industry leaders sharing their stories of personal and professional growth. In this series, we've got loads of exciting guests coming up for you, a brand new co-host for various episodes, and a quick fire round to really mix things up. I'm definitely excited to get going with it all, but before we do, I'd love it if you could subscribe and hit that notification button so that you're not missing out on any of the episodes that we upload. For now, thanks again for tuning in. Sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Huxley Morton podcast. This week, I'm joined by founder and CEO of Caritas Neuro Solutions, Leigh Fell. And as a first for us, and part of our new format, I'm pleased to welcome back on the show one of our first ever guests, Adam Walker. So Leigh, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are James. It's a pleasure to be involved.
Well, look, it's good to have you back on the show, Adam. And look, I'm sure that you'll be able to pitch in with various science-based sort of questions that perhaps sometimes I miss. So it's great to have you on board. But Leigh, I've given you a very quick introduction there. So Caritas Neuro Solutions. But look, for our audience, give us a bit more of an insight as to who you are, who the company is, and what you guys are doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll start off with my background then. I've been working in the clinical research industry for 13 years now. Come through the ranks, really started off in data management and worked through trial coordinator roles and monitoring and then project management before starting up Caritas. So actually most of my background was in oncology trials, but then when I started up Caritas, my first role was actually on an epilepsy study, and that kind of really resonated with me. It was a cannabinoid study in epilepsy, and it resonated because my brother actually used to have epilepsy when he was little, and so did my uncle. And at that point, I realised that kind of all the illnesses that have happened in my own family have been neurological. There's been Alzheimer's, strokes, depression, epilepsy. So that's why I decided to focus on neurology with this company. So that's where we got to. So we do oversight of clinical trials management, project management, monitoring, and helping with other departments as well. So yeah.
Very good to hear. And look, in the name, I guess it's something I always get asked as the company owner. Where did the name come from? Because I think when Adam first mentioned the name, I was like, I think I've heard that name, if you recall, Adam. I thought it was actually another recruitment business like myself. So look, where did the name originate from?
Yeah, so it's a Latin word that is used, I think, in quite a few organisations. I think it means mostly charity. But for me, it was part of our school motto. So our motto was Ex Cor di Caritas, which means love from the heart. So I've taken the meaning of love for all, the Caritas part meaning love for all. That's kind of encompasses the ethos of the company. We want to look after all of our people, from our employees to our clients, and obviously the patients at the end of the day. So that's the ethos of the company is.
And as an interesting aside, James, it just happened to be the motto of my school as well, Caritas.
Oh, did it? Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we use it as charity or caring. I went to a Catholic school in Brighton, and that immediately caught my eye as well, and it just resonated interestingly as a point of connection. But it's a great name, and I think it absolutely speaks to what you're doing as a company, Leigh.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it does. It seems, I think the word resonates with a lot of people, and with the mission that a lot of people have. So yeah.
Look, and I always think that is a great place to start with the company name and where it's originated from, and going back to, I guess, your school days. Because look, no one starts out as a founder of a business or a CEO unless you're one of these YouTuber whiz kids these days. But look, to sort of go back in time and to school days, college, university, and have a bit of a rewind. How did you first get into the industry? As you explained a moment ago, you kind of have gone through the clinical ranks, really. I mean, we focus heavily on recruiting within the clinical field, so CRAs, CPMs. You've kind of gone through all of that, but did you always want to go down this route? What was the life plan for yourself back then?
Well, actually, when I was at school, all the way through school, I wanted to be a vet. So yeah, animals were my thing, and I was dead focused on that. So I studied all the sciences. And then sadly didn't make it into the vet course. So I did biology and came out of uni, just applied for anything and everything to do with science, basically, and ended up in this industry just sort of by default, ended up in a data management position. And then it just kind of went from there. I actually had no idea the industry really existed before I was in it. So yeah, but it's just so instead of doing kind of animal medicine, I've kind of moved into the human medicine field, and then I believe that everything happens for a reason, and that I've come to this point in my career to make a difference in the world. So yeah, I believe that. Although it's not what I originally set out to do, I think it's worked out for the best. So yeah.
Amazing stuff. And how, I guess, talk us through some of your progression along the way, because as I say, look, no one starts out as a CEO. So you made that switch from going into being a vet. You ended up in the world of clinical research, clinical trials. Early on, you were in data management, and then moved into kind of a CRA based role. What was it about yourself that has allowed you to make those steps up? Because like for me, as I've always been in sports or in sales, and my performance pretty much dictated my I guess increase in pay and increase in status within a company. How did it work for yourself going through the ranks?
For me, I think I've just always been a person who was looking for the next challenge. I've always had a kind of sporting background as well, and just always looked for a challenge. And I guess that was I wanted to work my way up the ranks. Definitely, I wanted from early on. I knew I wanted to do project management. So I had that goal in my mind. I never had a goal of wanting to start a business. So I don't know where that came from really, but so whenever I chose jobs, I never, whenever I changed positions in companies, I never took a role based on the money. I took a role based on what I would learn and what experience I could gain from that. So I mostly went to really small organizations where you get far more variety of experience. But I have worked for big companies as well, and worked for the NHS at one point. So it was mostly about just trying to get absolutely as much experience as possible. And that by default, then you sort of become more, you're able to take on more interesting roles, and you are more readily able to move up just sort of by default, because you've got experience that other people maybe don't have. So yeah, it's just worked out by trying to challenge myself and learn new things that I moved up that way.
It sounds very much like you're comfortable in being out of your comfort zone. If I can pick up on that.
Yeah, funny that you say that, because I think I prefer that than sitting in my comfort zone. So yeah.
And I think it's a common thread that we see a lot with consultants, particularly, but the risk takers and those that are out of their comfort zone more regularly are those that climb faster, but also I think build a much stronger shield of armory around them, with which you can then pursue your career further. There are an awful lot of similarities between how you described that and my own experience as well. And I think it really speaks to, some of the skills, but also I think that more importantly, the qualities that you need to take on the role that you have and to really have the belief behind you to take that forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because I guess, by doing that, you do build up a kind of resilience, don't you? And I think you need to have a certain amount of resilience to build a business. So, I guess that's where it's come from. I hadn't really thought about that before.
And I think what I took from that there was, and I've recently been having so many conversations about it, about going somewhere to learn rather than to just earn. I've always been in favour of smaller, more entrepreneurial companies, because I wanted to know how things run from behind the scenes. I wanted to get a little bit involved in everything. And I think even before that, when I was a student, and probably wasn't the best mix. I was an international boxer and working at McDonald's, and I know that Adam, funnily enough, had also worked at McDonald's before getting into, I guess, full-time employment. But one thing that I took from McDonald's was the business systems there are just incredible. People often badmouth McDonald's and how it works, but they're clearly getting something right, because it's certainly not the best burger in the world, but they are selling millions of them daily, and it's the business system. So I think your methodology there of going where you're going to learn rather than just where you're going to earn is spot on.
I think ultimately it reaps dividends and it reaps its rewards, because people remember you, but also I think you never lose that learning. It becomes part of your experience, doesn't it? And that then becomes the things that you can call upon in those experiences back, as to how to deal with new situations when they come upon you, because invariably you'll have dealt with something that's similar to that, or a similar sort of situation, whether it's personal, professional, and all the pieces that touch around that. So
Absolutely.
I think you make a really good point there, James.
Most definitely. And look, so you climbed through the ranks. It was clear that you were perhaps strategic in where you went and what you was going to learn. What was it that enabled you to kind of perhaps have that bigger vision, or did you at that time? Did you always know that you were, planning to go it alone? Because for me, I didn't. It kind of my job had run its course, and I didn't really know what to do. And the option that I had was start my own business. How did Caritas come about for you? Was there a particular day or a moment that led you to it?
Yeah, I think there was. I remember one very clear moment, and then another couple of factors that fed into it. So the very clear moment I remember was actually being at the Scottish Life Science Awards dinner, and listening to somebody speak who had started a social enterprise, and he was a scientist that had started a social enterprise type business where they were selling pharmaceutical products to third world countries at rates that they could afford, but that allowed them to develop their own kind of businesses and things like that. And anyway, without going into too much detail about that particular business, I just remember being absolutely awestruck by this gentleman who was speaking, and just so inspired by the fact that you could make such a difference to people's lives. And I mean, I knew that we were making a difference in making cancer treatments, but just he had made such an impact on the world, and that just really inspired me. And I thought, I want to do that. I want to make a difference like that. And then there was two things. The company I was working for at that time just had the most amazing managers, the most amazing senior management team, and I really looked up to all of them. I hugely admired all of them and wanted to follow kind of in their footsteps. And two of them are now on my non-executive board because I just admire their leadership style so much. And then I went to a company that I was maybe not so enamored with the senior management style. And I think that made me want to develop a company that would look after people in the way that previous company I'd been at had really inspired me. So yeah, that's what it was. It was just being so inspired by these other people that had gone before me. I wanted to do that and to make a difference. So
what talk me through the day that you made? Was there one day where you were like, that's it, I'm leaving the job, I made a decision, you decided to go out and do it? Because it's not quite the fairy tale story that some people think becoming an entrepreneur. I remember myself, setting up a bank account, setting up all of these little things, and you just thought, I didn't have to deal with that as a sales rep or as a standard recruiter. Talk us through, I guess, that initial phase when you were like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take over the world, whatever it was. Talk us through that initial.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had the idea fairly early on, and had sort of created a little logo and things, and I had a whole little plan of what the business would be, but I wasn't really in a position to just quit my job and go and start the business. It was a while before. I kept applying for freelance roles to get out of the permanent cycle and get into the freelance roles.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to make that jump. And then once I did, it wasn't that I had any money to sort of, I didn't have a pool of money that I could invest in building the business. So I had to continue doing the freelance work for the most part to cover, my paying the mortgage and things like that. So that took up obviously most of my time. So it was kind of, in the early days, certainly it was building the business on the side, kind of in my own time out with doing a day job. So that kind of, it's tiring doing that, and you have to, because I was switching therapeutic fields as well, I had a huge oncology network, but I needed to build up a new neurology network, basically. So, it took a lot of plugging away at that for probably 3 or 4 years just on the side. And we're in year 5 now, and it's kind of at this point in year 5 that I've really seen over the last year a big step forward in terms of people know the name now, and they've obviously people have been watching it and been building the network over the years, and just suddenly there's a lot more happening now, and that seems to have happened all of a sudden. Obviously it doesn't happen overnight, but it feels in a way like I'd been plugging away at it for 4 years.
The way you describe it sounds a bit like, if you can get through, most companies say if you can get through 3 years, then you can get through. And what you seem to be describing is really you're reaping the rewards and the dividends of the effort that you put in over those years, but also building that strong network and reminding people about the capabilities of service, you as a person, but certainly Caritas as a business. And that there are common threads that run through that, but particularly as you're saying now, and I think James is probably going to move on to at some point talk about the impact of the pandemic, but certainly overlaying that effort that's gone in over those first 3 to 4 years, and then how that has translated itself as a springboard to the last year, 18 months. I think it would be fascinating to hear a bit more about, because it sounds like you've done the hard graft, you've done the hard yards, and now it's the building phase, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. And it seems like not only are we having more conversations now, I've also got more of a team on board, which has made such a huge difference, to have helping hands on board. So I know that you've been using the Kickstart scheme, James, and I've used that as a using. It's been great just to have these extra hands on board. And we've been really lucky with who we've managed to hire as well, and I've got more experienced consultants as well who are also taking ownership of various parts of the business as well. So it's just made such a huge difference too.
I think just to add to what Adam said there is, I feel exactly where you're coming from with the networking side of things. If anything, when I started out, I was probably a little bit arrogant about how many people knew James Fell. A lot of my clients, they would come to the business to do business with me. But then as soon as I left and, had non-compete clauses, et cetera, couldn't speak to anyone for, close to a year. It was a very daunting time of, can I pay the mortgage? Can I go shopping? Can I afford groceries, et cetera? So to get, as Adam says, once you've got through that initial period and you can start seeing light at the end of the tunnel and things start to grow, it's just so rewarding. So look, how are things, I guess, now going? You mentioned the Kickstart scheme. I'm using that too, which is, for any of our audience who are not familiar with that, it's a scheme for 16 to 24-year-olds, helping them back into the workplace, providing 6-month placements to, I guess, just give them an insight into industry, really, isn't it, Leigh? It's a rewarding scheme both for them and for companies, smaller organisations like us that kind of don't have buckets full of money to throw at the situation, and it's just mutually beneficial. I mean, so look, talk us through how things are going, how you've been impacted by the virus, COVID-19 over the past year, 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I must have been impacted. I feel like there wasn't a huge impact to our business. My work certainly kept going more or less as normal. I didn't have to travel as much, which actually was kind of nice for a year. But it didn't have a huge impact on our business directly. But I feel that obviously for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been advocating for more services for mental health and more mental health research, things like that. And all of a sudden, everybody gets it now. That's come out of the pandemic, that everybody understands the importance of mental health now. I'm sure people did before, but I just feel like people really get it now.
It's bigger now, isn't it? I think there's more awareness with it, and it's, I guess, widely accepted. That's a fair comment, I think.
Yeah. So because of that, really, certainly we've had more proposals coming in for mental health studies, which is really good, for depression studies and things, which is a really good sign because we didn't see very many before. So yeah, and I think there's also it kind of looks, the early signs suggest that there's going to be maybe longer term neurological impacts from COVID and sort of neuroinflammation type long-term implications, which potentially could mean that there will be more in the neurological space. And although I obviously hope that people don't have those long-term impacts from COVID, I think that the research that comes from that will hopefully benefit other indications, other illnesses in this space, and hopefully we'll start to really develop some new treatments for all these kind of neurological illnesses that we've struggled with up to now. So
most definitely. And Adam, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that you're heavily involved in the industry, biometrics consultant. What are you kind of seeing from your side of the fence? As a recruiter, kind of I'm not front line on that sort of thing, but for you guys who are living it, breathing it every single day, what would you add to that?
I'd reinforce the points that Leigh's making. The variation and the diversity in work and opportunities and proposals that are coming through the door are extraordinary. And I think to the point that Leigh made around the awareness of mental health, I mean, because we've been locked indoors for the best part of over a year, people have been looking to other means and tools by which they can get their support, their mental health support. I've come across a number of fantastic patient apps and mental health apps. One of them is called Woebot, WOEBOT, and that was the one that I just thought was fantastic. And so many of these patient apps in and around the mental health space are being enormously invested in at the moment. There's some incredible traction in the industry at the moment around patient apps, specifically around mental health. And I think that is only going to continue over the next year or two as we navigate our way out of this, because it's not going away. It's not going away anytime soon. And clearly the vaccine program is going to have an enormous part to play in opening up society across the UK and across the world. But the reality is that we are going to have to live a slightly different type of normal, and that isn't really being translated into the public domain by government and public speakers. But actually, I think those of us inside the industry have a slightly different perception of it. I don't know what your thoughts are around that, Leigh.
Yeah, well, actually, just when you're mentioning apps there and things, I guess that's another aspect that's going to dramatically change, is that clinical trials will be more remotely conducted as well. So there'll be a lot more remote patient visits and things, and they'll be using apps and wearable devices and things like that going forward. I think for clinical trials, I think that's one of the huge changes that will have come from this pandemic. And hopefully just more engagement with the patients through these sorts of things as well. I think that there is an opportunity here to have more patient-centered clinical trials, and certainly more collaborative.
You only have to think about some of the language that now in the public domain that we always used to take for granted being in science, that is now everyday parlance. Things like things like the word pandemic, but particularly, who would have known what an R number was a year ago, and various other aspects of this. We're all backseat scientists now. Everyone has an opinion about whether or not we should be opening up, what rules and regulations should look like. But I think also, to your point, Leigh, the clinical trial space has absolutely transformed in the last year. We are all effectively, if you've chosen to take the vaccine or a vaccine, we are all effectively a living human clinical trial right now, because there hasn't been particularly long-term safety data. There has been some, but certainly it's ongoing, and most of the major pharmaceutical companies that are running vaccine programs right now are doing that and will be doing that for some years to come. So many people are experiencing these things for the first time. We're used to having regular flu updates and flu virus updates in our bodies, but actually this is different. It feels different, and the dialogue around it is very different. It's public domain. I turned on the news at lunchtime today, and what's the thing that they're talking about at the dispatch box in PMQs? They're talking about AstraZeneca. They're talking about the vaccine. It's all the language that we're hearing all the time. It's breaking down those barriers, and it's making these things more accessible to everyone.
I think a lot of people just didn't really know that we existed before in this industry, and certainly my friends and family, a lot of them had no understanding of what I did at all. And now at least they have a slightly better understanding of what I do. It doesn't go right over their heads.
You must get it all the time, Leigh, where people are now like, oh, that's what you do. Because, my partner Lucy and I were walking our son to nursery just earlier this week. And, she works as a clinical business operations manager for IQVIA. And we had no idea. And she was asking us, what we did in recruitment. And she was like, oh, so you must know CRAs and CPM. I've never had anyone who knows about that. But, since sort of the pandemic, more and more people are, aware of trials. So, in a way, the raised awareness is, a bit of a silver lining that has come out of the pandemic. Clearly you guys have been somewhat unfazed, Leigh, with things. So, how are things looking for you in terms of the business going forward now? Are you still working from home? What challenges has that perhaps thrown up? What are the biggest challenges that you've faced over the last year, whether it's been training the new guys remotely or, managing clients, et cetera, remotely? What's been the biggest challenge for you?
I was working from home before anyway, so in that respect, that's been okay. I guess training the new people on the team, particularly the graduates. So I've got 2 graduates who are completely new to the industry, and I feel they've been fantastic, and obviously they're computer literate and things are better than we are, but just it's a shame that we can't sort of interact directly and show them everything that we're doing, and so that's really a shame, but we're in constant contact and hopefully going to be able to get the team together soon if everything stays as it is. So that's probably one of the biggest things. I've actually in terms of having conversations with various different people and networking and things, I've actually preferred all this being online because it's a lot easier than running around to different locations. I really enjoyed seeing people's faces on videos rather than having telecons and things all the time. So probably the biggest challenge has been just not being able to see my own team directly, which is a shame. But hopefully that will get better. But we're finding different ways of working, and I try and look for the positives, and we're trying to we will stay a remote team for the foreseeable, because most of us are quite spread out anyway. We're not all in Edinburgh, so.
I guess, look, this is perhaps a bit of a selfish question, I guess, because look, we're also remote, and we've implemented some amazing systems for remote-based training and operating as a remote recruitment business. But is there any tips and tricks that you would sort of give to our audience, if they're also running teams remotely, that you could perhaps pass on in that sense, in terms of virtual meetings or anything like that you've been
I guess this is not a technology thing, and it's a ridiculously simple thing, but we've started doing this in our team meetings. And this comes from, I've done a lot of kind of mindset training, as you can imagine, because I'm running a mindset company. So one of the key things that you learn when you do mental health training is obviously to feel gratitude to feel grateful for the things that you have in your life, whether it's small, big things, family, it could be a nice cup of coffee in the morning. So when we have our team meetings, we start off going around everyone and just say 2 or 3 things that we're each grateful for. And I think that starts the meeting off on a really positive note. And it also, they're not work-related things. So, you get to know each other a little bit as well, and you know what's going on in people's lives. And I think that I feel like that has worked well so far, and I'd like to incorporate more things like that into our meetings. So yeah, I don't know if that's
amazing.
I'll think of that, but
no, look,
I'm smiling. I'm smiling on the outside. I'm smiling on the inside as well, because I think to show gratitude and kindness costs nothing, but actually it shows humility, and I think that demonstrates clearly the leadership that you have, but also that you're looking to engender in your teams as well, because what you put out comes back to you. And I think this is something I've really experienced a lot in the last year. You talked about seeing people's faces. You can really gauge quite a lot, actually. I think when you look at people's faces, you see their level of engagement. There's no hiding place when you're not on the phone and you have to physically engage for the entire time of the discussion. But also, we're seeing each other's homes. We're seeing how people present themselves. I've seen a couple of people who've turned up on Zooms and I said, my goodness me, crikey, someone could do with a shave. Do you know what I mean? Or lockdown hasn't been so good for you. But, I'm not judging by any stretch, but it's very interesting, isn't it? When you haven't seen those people for a period of time, and maybe the last time you saw them was in an office setting, and then suddenly they're in front of you and they're on the screen. And it's a completely different dynamic, isn't it?
It's funny, the change of hairstyles, I think, has been the biggest thing for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Thank God we're gone from last year when some of the haircuts were absolutely horrendous. So I'm glad that is all gone now, at least.
My barber tells me that people are having different haircuts. Clearly, I'm not. I'm going for a short one. But my barber tells me that people are liking and embracing the longer haired look now. So he's doing a lot more 80s and 90s styles, mullets and all sorts of other stuff going on. You'd be interested to know. Wow. Not on me, though.
So, look, Leigh, I love that idea. It sounds like business is going well. You're growing. You're getting more people on board. You've got some good system, not just business systems, I guess mindset kind of systems through your background that you're implementing, and I guess practicing what you preach, I guess, which is always quite refreshing to come across. What are your plans now moving forward? What's next for you as an individual, for Caritas as a business? Talk us through your plans for the rest of this year and moving into 2022.
Well, the plans for this year are to, we're doing a lot of proposals at the moment, building the business, really sort of getting our structures in place and everything, and ready to take on sort of bigger projects. At the moment, it's been, small bits and pieces of work that we've done, but we're bidding on bigger trials now and bringing in other vendors. We're speaking to lots of vendors from different disciplines. So it's bringing all that together and sort of getting some form of structures in place so that we can take on these bigger studies when hopefully they come rolling in the next.
Fingers crossed, right?
And now you said it. You've got it recorded, and you can play this back in a year's time and see whether or not you achieved what you aimed for.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Say it, manifest it, and see if it comes back.
There you go. A new benchmarking tool with the Huxley Morton podcast.
Exactly. So and building the team still. So hopefully have more people on board by the end of the summer, I would hope. But we'll see.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, I guess it's been great to hear, I guess, about you, how the business started, how it's going, and the challenges that you faced, etc. Which now brings us to, I guess, a new part of the show, new format. Obviously, having Adam on has been a joy. But a quick fire round Leigh, to, I guess, close us off for the afternoon or evening as it is for us guys in the UK. So Leigh, for our quick fire round, a couple of questions for you here. Look, what is the number one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I think the thing that stands out for me personally, it is a very personal thing, but it's to not be ashamed of being the quiet one. I was always quiet at school, and people make you feel like that's not the way you should be, but actually I don't think that's is a compliment in management. So
interesting. I read a piece recently about how introverts are going to take over the world, so watch this space. Hopefully those predictions come through. Look, my next question, what are the top 3 qualities that you value most when building a team? You've been doing it recently. What are the 3 top qualities that you look for?
I think openness, open-mindedness as well as openness, and trust, probably, because you have to trust. You're kind of putting your baby out there to the team, your business, and you have to trust that you've picked the right people and they're good there and they trust you as well. So yeah, openness.
Delegation is an art, isn't it? It's an art.
Yeah.
It certainly is. Not always easy, but I guess once you learn to let go, it's certainly useful.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 3. What is the number 1 book or resource website that you would perhaps recommend for our audience working in clinical trials, clinical research?
So yeah, I was trying to think about this earlier. It's so hard to choose one book. And you say the word resource. So I would say the most important resource is your own mindset. So I would say invest in your own mind, and everything else will kind of take care of it. And that can be in whatever shape or form is right for you. It's different for everyone, but just invest in your mindset.
Love that. Wasn't expecting that as an answer, but yeah, no, I like that. A bit out of the box. Okay, and look, we've talked a lot about work and the business. What is your favourite thing outside of work?
My dog. Walking in the hills with my dog, probably. Yeah.
Good stuff, particularly at the moment where the weather's good, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Look, finally, to close us off for the show, and I think we're going to make this a running feature with everyone that we have on. What is your number 1 golden rule in life and in business?
It's very simple. It's be kind. I think it's very underrated. I think it goes a long way, and yeah.
Well, I guess, look, with what we've talked about and mindset and what you're trying to achieve as a business, I think it goes hand in hand with that. So that simplicity is fantastic sometimes. So I think that's a fantastic way to round off the show. Leigh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Adam, your input has been great.
Thank you very much. I mean, honestly, I think the platform was made for Leigh, to be honest. She's told a great backstory, but also I think shown such a depth of humility in everything that she does. And
definitely,
clearly, whatever comes in the future will be based upon sound business practice, but actually more importantly, I think really, really important values that matter to her and matter to her business. And, I think, you deserve all the success that comes your way, Leigh.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Adam, and thank you, James. Thanks for having me on here.
And I will definitely second that. And look, for our audience and anyone that's looking to reach out to you, whether it's on a business level, mindset level, personal level, what is the best way to get you? Naturally, we'll share your website as any of the description here. But what's the best way to reach out to yourself, Leigh?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn is the most successful way. Fire me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let me know where you're from, and then we can chat further. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Leigh, look, thanks again for coming on to the Huxley Morton podcast. Pleasure having you on. And look, clearly, Adam and I will now be watching your journey intently to see if those predictions are made a reality in the coming months. So look, thanks again to you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Leigh.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Bye.